Support for Faith on Trial and Iowa Catholic Radio provided in part by Imogene Ingredients.
Our freedom of conscience and religion is being challenged by laws and regulations imposed by secular society. It's time to hear from the top Christian litigators in the nation who have come forward to tell us the truth and help us defend our faith.
Hear ye, hear ye. All rise. Faith on Trial with Defender of the Faith, Deacon Mike Mano, is in session.
For the 437th and last time, welcome to Faith on Trial. This is where we examine the influence of law and society on people of faith. I'm Deacon Mike Mano, hosting the last program along with Gina No, our co-host. How are you today, Gina?
Good morning, Deacon Mike. This is a big day for you.
Yeah, this is it. We're getting right close to the end now. Let me make sure I turn this thing on, yeah. And I've got my gavel here that Tony Valdez gave me. Apparently it's been laying around the studio for some time, and it was used a couple of times. They used it at the beginning to start the show.
That's right.
And now we're going to gavel it out for the final time here at the end.
Well, we'll just hear the pound every once in a while, and we'll know that Mike is in control.
That's right.
One last time.
One last time. And we're going to have a special show for us today. We have Lisa Bourne with us from Heartbeat International, and we have Jeff Pierick, who is a pro-life advocate extraordinaire and a very devout Catholic layman who is at our parish. And Jeff, I want to thank you for being here too. You've been a part of this. Both of you have been part of this show in one way or another. Maybe you don't realize it or not, but you have been. And so we're starting our last show. Now, Gina, you just had a dentist appointment this morning.
I did.
So I hope,
my teeth are nice and clean if the viewers can see that.
We've got a camera on in here today, so we don't know what
I am
is
good to go.
You're going to be on the podcast or what. But anyway, we will start. Gina, let's start off right away with a prayer. You got our prayer? Yes.
The prayer that we've used the entire programming that is very helpful for me, and I'm hoping it's helpful for our listeners. It was given to us by Pope Benedict. So in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. A prayer for peace today. God of peace, bring your peace to our violent world. Peace in the hearts of all men and women, and peace among the nations of this earth. Turn to your way of love those whose hearts and minds are consumed with hatred, and strengthen us all in hope, and give us the wisdom and courage to work tirelessly for a world where true peace and love reign among the nations and in the hearts of all. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. And at this point, we'd usually go to a break, but we're going to go straight through. Just one commercial interruption today, and we're going to go straight through. So let's start off here with a little bit about how we started this program. I guess the first program that we have was May 13th, 2013. And that was a weekend program. And what we did at the time was I would call a couple of people and get their comments on something, and we'd tape it on a, what do you call it?
Like an audio show?
An audio
program, app. Yep.
An app on that. And then I'd send it down to the studio with some other material that I would write up, and they put it together and it run on the weekend.
That's right.
And that's how we started this program.
And at that point in time, I was simply a listener, and I enjoyed those Saturday morning episodes that you put together while I was running errands.
Yeah.
I admired that. Yeah. I looked forward to hearing the next piece of information each week.
Yeah, well, thank you. I had one listener anyway at the time. And so Mike Peters, who was the director of the studio at the time, who was the managing editor of what was going on here, came to me during the first couple of months there, and he says, I've got good news and bad news for you. And I said, what is the bad news first? He says, I'm taking you off the weekend schedule. He said, you're not going to be on anymore. I said, well, what is the good news then? He said, I'm putting you on live during the week. And so we went on live on, let's see, it was, I've got the date down here. The first live program we had on a Tuesday where we have the format that we have now, was on October 22nd, 2013. Okay? And the interesting thing was our first guest, and this was, you came in on our second program, Gina.
That's right.
Yeah.
It took me a while to convince me to do this.
Yeah. And but the first live program we had, our guest was Brad Dacus from the Pacific Justice Institute. Interesting case he had at the time. And see if this doesn't play out now. Girls were suing their school because they were allowing men into the locker rooms. Okay? And as I recall that case, it was in Colorado, and as I recall in that case, the federal judge ruled that the transgender right to be someplace outweighed the privacy interest of the girls. And so Brad lost that case, or at least lost it in the first go-around. But you talk about how far we go back and what we've talked about.
Do you remember, we could not believe that people were that crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're surrounded by crazy, even in the heartland here in America.
Crazy at the time when we started this program was the lunch ladies telling little kids, you can't pray over your meal at lunch because that's against the law to pray in a
right.
public school.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons we felt so strongly about dedicating our time to this program each week, was because what was happening in the coasts, really, at the time, you kept saying, we need to know about these things because they will creep their way into the center of this country. And you were right.
Mm-hmm. And they have. They've creeped their way all the way in. But anyway, now how I got you is when Mike Peters told me that we were going to go live, I said, I want to have a co-host. And I couldn't think of a co-host at the time, so I asked Luann, who's here but not going to be on the radio because I promised her she wouldn't have to say anything. She's just taking pictures of our final day.
She's supporting us like she does every week, quietly and in her own way.
And I asked Luann, and she, who would you recommend? And she said Gina Knoll. She was in
I don't know why.
in Chirp with you, and I guess you impressed her. And I remember calling you and asking you if you'd like to join me on the program. And I hardly knew you, and you hardly knew me. You knew Luann better than you knew me.
I knew your program, though.
And I kept telling you what we were doing. And I remember your answer to me is, you're not selling this, Mike. You're not making me want to do this. And so that's why I did the first one by myself. And you called me and you said, let me think about it. And I'll come and do one program and see how it goes. So you came in and did the second program, and I could tell from the look in your eyes midway through that program that you were hooked on this thing and that you were going to be back.
Yes, I enjoy having conversations that are intelligent, and I think that that's what this program is. It brings a lot of history, a lot of theology, some politics. It's all things that interest me. So, yes, I've enjoyed it ever since.
Very good, very good. Yeah, and this is not the normal program that you hear on a religious station.
No, and a lot of what we cover, you don't hear in the national media, and some of the stories that we'll never hear outside of this programming, but it's important to Catholics and people of faith, of all faith denominations, to see what's happening in our country and our world that affects us in the way we practice our faith.
And Lisa and Jeff, join in, if you will. What about this program? What have we done that's different that you enjoy or you fear or you don't like or whatever? But I do think we are on a different plane than a lot of the other programs on a Catholic radio network.
Well, to Gina's point, you bring stories to the fore that we might not learn about elsewhere, but it's that connection of faith and culture and law, obviously the foundation for the program. But, for my part, Deacon, I think yours is a voice that is measured and wise and gentle and necessary. And you've put the spin, if you will, for lack of a better term, on all of this. You've brought in all these, different guests with all these different important topics and presented it in such a way that it's been packaged perfectly for the listener, in my opinion.
Well, thank you. I think we've sent a lot of people to the antacid tablet bottle a time or two. We used to call some of our shows, this is our 2 antacid show, this is our 1 antacid show, because they were infuriating topics. Jeff?
Yeah, no, I mean, to me, your show was every week I had to listen. And
I know. You're the one person that every time I ran into you, the first thing that you said to me was, who's on next? Yeah.
I love the show. And what I like, I mean, some of the other podcast things I listen to that they may talk about a lot of different issues. I liked it that you were focused. And so more recently, and I don't know how many years it's been, but you had the 2 guests and that you focused on their case or their issue, their matter. They may talk about some other things along with that issue, but there was kind of more depth into it. And along with, sometimes you had the lawyer for them. Sometimes you had the person. I mean, Kyle Seraphin, did you have him once or twice. On the whistleblower, the FBI? And you really had the connections to get the people there. And so it was something I had to watch every week. But just the depth, I really appreciated that, to hear kind of the background, that sometimes even good sources that they'll just kind of gloss over, and you don't get kind of the real people behind the issue of where their religious liberty is being challenged or the pro-life people are being pushed back by our secular world and or the government.
I think one of the things that helped us out in your regard was the length of our interviews. And Gina, I know you've mentioned this before when you've been booking guests. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes when I book a guest and they're shocked that we get a full 20 minutes because, oftentimes they have to explain their case in like 3-minute sound bites, right? Mm-hmm. So we're lucky to be able to really dig in and learn more about the case and learn more about the defendants behind the case.
Mm-hmm. And I noticed that you always seem to ask some of the better questions during the interviews.
That's because I'm not a lawyer.
You're not a lawyer,
yeah. And half the time I don't know what you guys are talking about, so I have to ask.
And but I remember one time, and this was brought home to me, one case we had, I guess it was Sweet Cakes by Melissa, the one up in Oregon or whatever.
Sure.
They were kind of shut down the baker there, and I went through the whole thing with the lawyer, and then it was your turn to ask questions, and the first thing you ask is, how's Melissa doing? Yeah. How are the people doing?
She and her young family were really persecuted. As many of these defendants are in these cases, they're really kind of martyrs for the faith in our current situation and country. So I have great admiration for their strength and courage.
Yeah.
So there's a perfect mix with the 2 of you, I would say, because Gina, you brought the listener's perspective in by being able to come in not as a lawyer and what have you, and ask those questions that inquiring listeners want to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I thought you brought in the human side. I mean, that point about how she's doing now. I mean, obviously there's a lot of issues and challenges in society, but how the people behind it, like you said, the white martyrs, how they are reacting to it and how that's affecting their life going forward.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I think that longer interview time made for a better program.
Exactly.
Made for a better program. And so we would divide up the hour into 2 20-minute segments, and then we'd have an opening and a closing, which take up the other 10, and that got us through the hour, and it seemed to work out pretty well.
Sometimes it went really fast, and sometimes I couldn't wait for that 20 minutes to get over with.
Yeah, we had...
Depending on the program.
We had great guests.
We did.
But there were some of them that you could tell were not used to being interviewed, and it was sometimes like pulling teeth.
Sure.
To get them to talk on something. And we managed to do it, but most of the guests we had were pretty good. And one of the, Deacon Mark asked me yesterday during our interview that Gene and I had with the studio, what program do you remember the most? And one of the ones that I remember the most, and I think the one that I mentioned, Jeff, was one you set up for us. It was when you had the Fatima people in town, and you had a program over at St. Augustine's.
Yeah, Rex Teodosio with the Tradition, Family, and Property. I thought he I mean, his knowledge of the faith was just really impressive. And they actually come through. They do a caravan, usually with 10 to 15 people. They come through once or twice a year. They usually in Des Moines. They stay at our house, and a lot of times they have younger kids, high school age, and they do it in the summer a lot of times. And just how amazing they are where they go and they deal with these issues in life and marriage that are being attacked, and they do public rallies. But his talk about Fatima I thought was really impressive.
And of course I'm a married person, and so when I had an opportunity to visit with Rex, we had him in here for a whole hour, and we talked about Fatima, the secrets of Fatima, the whole story of Fatima, which that's one of the memorial ones that we did that you set up for us, and that was a great one. Now we did a couple others on Mary because we would sometimes step away from law and things like that. We did one on Garambandal, the guy who just wrote the book on Garambandal, which was a Spanish Marian apparition, which has not been approved yet, but the guy has a new book out on it. It was interesting to talk to him. We also did a program with a guest on Our Lady of Good Success, the one in Ecuador in the 1600s. We talked about that one. And then when I was at a Deacons Marian conference in New York, I was roomed right next to a Monsignor who had spent 20 years in the Vatican working on Mary issues. And so we called him one time, and we had him on talking about some of these things. So we got off the tracks a little bit once in a while, but it was all
entirely.
interesting.
I would say our mother has been dabbled in politics throughout the centuries. She has warned us of the dangers of communism. When you think of Fatima, that's one of the things you think of. So I believe she's very relevant to this program, and
she's very relevant to being
to everything.
Stopping the program too, because of the book that I'm trying to write. And I suppose we may as well talk about that.
That's a good idea. What are you going to do, Deacon Mike?
The reason why we're stopping this is, as everybody here knows, it was a couple of years ago I had a stroke. And my eyesight and cognitive ability have been impaired slightly. And so it's made it much more difficult for me to do the things that I normally did. I practiced law. I was a Catholic chaplain at a drug and rehab center. I taught college. I did a lot of different things. Wrote for The Wanderer. Did this radio program. All of a sudden, time got goofy on me because I couldn't read and I couldn't see very well. It was very difficult for me to carry on most of these activities. And obviously I couldn't practice law. Jeff, you know that you can't, if you can't read, now if I was blind from birth and knew Braille, I might have been able to get, because there are attorneys that have done that. But if you can't read pleadings, if you can't read medical reports, can't read that kind of stuff, and you don't have the ability to get up and on your feet all the time in a courtroom, it's rather difficult to practice law. And so I had to give up some of those things, but I kept writing for The Wanderer, and I kept this program up. This program, I think, came out a little bit better because I have Gina here with me, and Gina was like a radio wife. As soon as my problem hit and I couldn't think of something, she'd finish my sentence for me. And so anyway, it got to the point where I had to slow down. I had to jettison a couple of things. And there's something that I want to do, and that I started many years ago, writing a book. And the book is about a 9-year-old girl that claims to see a vision in a churchyard in a rural Iowa parish. And that's the basics of the book, and you can kind of tell where that's going. And I made a promise some time ago to the lady upstairs that I would get it done. And so this is, in a way, my fulfilling that promise is stop and to finish it, to get that book finished. And so that's what I'm going to be able to do now. So you talk about Mary being part of the program.
Right.
Yeah. She's part of the reason why we're ending the program. Now, what we're going to do in the future, I figure it's going to take me about 6 months to finish off the book. We've had some talk about coming back and doing an occasional podcast here, and so we're open to that. We'll see how that works out. As long as I get through the book, I'll be happy, I guess.
Yeah, Iowa Catholic Radio's been improving and adding different outlets like the YouTube channel, and I noticed on the Apple podcast you can get the programming from our local programming here on the station. So maybe perhaps we'll be one of those that would be available in those slots.
And we should mention that we are adding a couple of stations shortly. There's a couple of new stations
I know, it's
out
growing.
there. So that takes us up to 10, I think, 10 stations in the network. Yeah. So what are you going to do, Gina?
But it doesn't matter where we're at. You can listen to us online anytime, which is nice, either live or any of the recorded programmings.
So what are you going to do with the time off that you're going to get?
Well, a lot less reading about these horrible cases that we examine each week. It'll be nice to take a break from some of that.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm jealous of the people who don't know sometimes all the things that we cover on this programming.
That's right. And as you say, when you talk to people say, I've never heard of that before. Never heard this is going on before. And yeah, unfortunately it is. And we tried to bring that to people over the years. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So let's talk about the future a little bit, because that's our last program that we had. We had on two guests that talked about the future in their areas. One was in college campuses and the other was in law. And so what are we looking at here? You know, you people are laymen. You're not broadcasters, and you're not journalists, but you're involved in the church, and you're involved in your faith. So what do you see coming up? We're going to have a change of administrations here shortly, which may help things, may not. But what do you see coming up, Lisa?
In terms of, laity in the church? Coming up as we dawn 2025?
Right.
Wow, that's a tough question. We've been through so much in the last 4 years alone. You don't want to list some of the things, but it's we just have to put our providence in the Lord and through Mother Mary to get us through what have you. I mean, I'm optimistic. I'm realistic, but I'm optimistic, kind of a mix. So I guess what I see coming would be, I don't think that the principalities and the powers that have been challenging us on these issues are just going to go away quietly because there's an administration or whatever's going on in the church. So I think that the battles will continue. They're just going to present potentially in different forms. And, we just have to be prepared and be on our knees and on our feet in terms of that preparation, with our faith and with our families and our loved ones.
Okay, so what do we have to do as individuals?
Well, we listen to programs like this one. I know it's going away, but we have faith. We have tools among our arsenal, if you will. Iowa Catholic Radio being one of them. We look to the church and its communication avenues to inform us, but there's also some valuable tools in secular media. I personally am a news junkie. That's not everybody's thing, but being informed is the first step, whether it's directly related to your faith or not, because it all comes around to intersecting with our faith. I mean, you were talking about Mary. Maybe gets no. I mean, our faith is infused in everything we do, and Christ is King. Mary is his mother. It doesn't have to be by definition directly related. It's still related in some way.
But from a programming standpoint, as we're looking at things, it does seem a little different. Yeah,
sure. But your faith can be on trial whether you're in a courtroom or not.
That's right.
So.
That's right.
No, I think what Lisa said is right. I mean, I think, and Jesse Romero uses the term high information Catholic, that really know what's going on and be aware of it. I mean, some people can take more than others. I mean, it can be, obviously there's challenges in our world, but there's good things, and I see good things. And I guess, I don't know, butchering the quote, but Archbishop Sheen talked about, don't wait for the priest, don't wait for the bishops to save the church, the laity have to save the church. And what I've noticed a lot, just I think the last couple of years of just more laity wanting to come to different Catholic events. I don't know, you talked about on your show, I don't remember the last few weeks, but there was last year satanic display at the Capitol.
Mm-hmm. There was this year too.
Well, it wasn't. They canceled it.
Oh, did they cancel it?
They canceled it. So yeah, last year, so it was supposed to be up for 2 weeks, and I can't remember. It was during that 2 week period when the person destroyed it. This year it was
beheaded Satan.
Yes, he did. And this year was set up for one day on a Saturday, last Saturday. And so we organized a rosary that we were going to do. And there was actually an interdenominational prayer service. I don't know how organized it was, but people just to come from 9 to 12. And then we didn't want to be overlap that, so we scheduled a rosary for 12:30. And then there was another prayer service later. But then the weather Saturday, we ended up having to cancel. And then it must have been a few days before the display itself was canceled. And I don't do social media, but someone forwarded that the Church of Satan in Iowa, or Iowa Church of Satan, I don't know what their exact name is, but they said that the administrative agency said they couldn't put that up, and I'm assuming it was a few days before because I don't think it was weather related. So hopefully that won't go up. But I see a lot of those events. I mean, you see at like public libraries, drag shows. The Ames Public Library had a tarot card reading 2-3 weeks ago. You see a lot of these events, and it's one thing at private businesses, but when you see the government or the public entities doing that, and so with some other people, we've organized some different prayer rallies saying the rosary, and I see a lot more energy and people wanting to be involved in that. And so I see hope there. And so as far as the laity, I see people stepping up. And I mean, obviously the answer is prayer and fasting and stick to the sacraments. And so I think people are doing that more and recognizing the power of that within our church.
Jeff, I think you're a perfect example of the laity in action. We both touched on you need to pray and be prepared, and I referenced being informed, and as you did as well. So you can't be too informed. You can't be too fortified with prayer. People need to be fed. They need to be fed in their faith. They need to be fed information so they can be make informed decisions and be aware of things. But then they need to show up. And your efforts in galvanizing people, I think, are wonderful and effective. And we all need to show up in our respective roles. What that means, whether that's ministering to our family or showing up in the public square, like you have done and encourage people to do when things like the satanic display come. So again, it's all about being prepared and informed and strong and equipped in your faith.
We have one commercial break we have to make, and we're going to make it right now. You're listening to Faith on Trial on the Iowa Catholic Radio Network. And we're back. You're still listening to Faith on Trial on the Iowa Catholic Radio Network. The wheels are falling off here as we go into our last day.
Well, the format's different. So.
Yeah, the format is a lot different. So let's go back to what we're talking about. Let's look ahead. What do you see happening? Gina, let's start with you first. You've been around here so long.
Well, one of the things for me is I watch our government at work every day, and they're very reactive to a lot of the things that happen on a daily basis. But really, the hearts and minds of the constituents, the public, need to change. There's only so much that they can do. I recently came across someone who had some information about how the Ames public school system was working with the Ames Library to subvert the legislation that required certain publications be kept out of our elementary schools. And they were making it still available to the children and meeting the letter of the law. I tell that story because it's important that and I know now more parents are being involved. I love that. But we as citizens need to step up and really be, elections matter. So we need to watch our school boards and our city councils and our library boards and even our public parks boards, because our leadership at the state and national level aren't going to be able to solve these problems for us. In fact, sometimes they make things worse. I'll take the FACE Act, for example. Mm-hmm. It was a wonderful piece of legislation that would protect the abortion clinics from, in our churches from attacks, right?
And
now it's being used.
The pro-life clinics too,
right? And our pro-life clinics, and now it's being used against people of faith to persecute us. And again, it takes a change of heart, and I'm really glad that Roe v. Wade and Casey were overturned. But there's still a fight out there, and some of our states are doing beautiful work. But again, it's an education and a change of heart by Americans and our populace. So I guess that's my point going forward. And without this show, I would encourage our listeners to stay informed and continue to get involved, whether it's a prayer rally that Jeff Pierick instigates at the Capitol, or in your own home or your own school or your own library. Speak up.
One of the things I would recommend to people out there, if they want to follow up on a lot of this stuff, is Catholic Vote. Go to CatholicVote.com. They have a Loopcast that you listen to every morning.
Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Friday.
Yep. They talk about the issues of the day. I love that. Also
We've had those people on several times on our program.
Erica Ahern.
Erica Ahern.
We call her Smiley. She loves that.
Yeah,
we love having Erica tell us what's up. So, yeah. And I think on our social media, we probably will continue to post relevant information, or at least the websites of organizations that are sharing information.
That's right. We still have our blog up, faithontrialradio.blogspot. Yeah,
and we'll continue to
continue.
Right. It won't be about the show, but it will be about relevant issues.
We may be losing our Facebook page. They've stopped posting our stuff.
Oh.
They contacted me some time ago, somebody from Facebook, and said we violated their community standards by infringing on their copyright or something like that. And I said, what? The only thing that we put up there is the same thing we put up on my page, and it is put up on several other pages that take it, is the the promo for the program. And then the other things that we would put up with it would just be things that would, we found this someplace and here it is, just repeating stuff. A lot of it from Facebook itself, that we're just reposting things. And I didn't understand how we could infringe on their copyright. And so I asked them, and I've asked them twice, once in November and once just recently, and they don't respond back. So there may not be any reason to keep that up anymore. I'll see if I can straighten that out, because that's a nice platform to use. And we had a lot of followers on that. But
well, we have a Twitter also, which I think we could probably
we do have a
use
Twitter.
a little bit more often, too.
Mm-hmm.
So
we do have a Twitter.
Stay tuned.
And we have a couple other things. Yeah, I'll have more time to do some of that. One of the things in putting together the program and writing the column and all that is I didn't have time to spend a lot of time with Twitter, and we're on Truth Social, and we're on a couple other platforms, and we just don't have the time to get out there and involve ourselves in those anymore. So now we will. Yeah. And if my book fails, I'll have a lot more time to do that. Yeah. All right, we're coming off 4 hard years, I think. And I think we had somebody who was running, or apparently running the country, who was seemed to be adamantly opposed to what the church was doing. He claimed to be one of us, but I have to wonder with the decisions that he or somebody else has made that it didn't seem to work out that way. We have a lot of push now for LGBT people involved in women's sports and things like that. Again, one of our first guests, Brad Dacus, talking about infringements in the girls' locker room, and we still see that. How long is that going to go on?
I don't know. Which one of us would you like
I'm
to
looking. I'm looking at the mother of 2 girls. Tell me.
Well, I think there's definitely a movement. Many people didn't believe that it was actually happening. I think it's becoming more and more evident to all of us that it's in all of our communities, and it's not right for our girls to endure this kind of abuse. So I'm hoping that the movement will continue and people will rise up and it will eliminate itself over time.
And adjacent to that is this concept of schools talking about transgenderism and you might be born in the wrong body and all this. And there's a movement now, and maybe, Jeff, you've followed the legal stuff on this, and that's to stop this what they call gender-affirming medical care, which includes puberty blockers and eventually butchering up a child's body. Now, they're going after some of those places, and they're trying to shut them down, and the law, there's a lot of legislation passed to try and shut them down, but that's going to be a big battle in the courts, I think, in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think, well, there was a Supreme Court case, the oral arguments were heard a week and a half ago, and the supposed first transgender lawyer, who Grinnell College graduate, argued for the side against, I think it was Arkansas's law, so it'd be interesting to see, and hopefully the Supreme Court will come out on the right side with it, but there's a big push with that. I actually had the pleasure of speaking to 8th graders yesterday about it was a career day, and we spoke on the law, and a couple of the teachers, the whole pronoun thing, when I get emails from the teachers as far as, being there at a certain time, they have their pronouns in there. And so, it really is integrated in the schools. Obviously the schools aren't approving the surgeries per se, but it just keeps kind of pushing. And so hopefully the courts will do the right thing and respect parental rights, which is, it's one thing, where you're talking about adults doing things, whether that's harmful to society and the whole thing with the morality of it, but the kids. And I think you're seeing some pushback where some of these kids, as they get older, recognizing, they made a big mistake and they ruined their life and they can't, whether they're male, female, that they can't have kids, and we're seeing some of that backlash, and they're saying, how did you let me do this when I was 14? I was a 14-year-old, and hopefully, we'll get this changed, but clearly, the path has been going down the wrong road for a long time, and I think a lot of it we weren't aware. The schools and just other organizations did it, and the parents weren't aware of what was going on. There's a movie, The Art Room, or Art Club, I think it's called, and I'm talking about there's two kids, and the one was in Colorado, one was in Florida, and how they indoctrinated the kids on transgenderism without the parents knowing. And in the one case, the mother actually worked in the school, and still, and then even the government got involved. And so hopefully we're starting to see this turn, but we still have a long ways to go, and we have to keep fighting in the courts, but also, the prayer and fasting, and keep praying, because some of this is just pure demonic.
Yeah.
You mentioned, Deacon, that that we've had a rough road the last 4 years. We absolutely have. I'm looking at it that it has ripped the cover off of a lot of things. Now we know a lot more about what's going on in the schools. We know what's going on with some of these medical facilities that are pushing these awful, awful things on our children. And I really think that it all is an attack on life. It all comes back around to the rejection of life. The only attack on life isn't abortion. It goes way beyond this. It's all a rejection of God. And again, our faith is in God and not in government. But I am encouraged with a new administration coming in, because I think a lot of this has now been exposed, and I think people are rising up. Not that they can't more, and more hearts do need to be changed, but we're going to be more empowered now to make change, because people are waking up. And I think that there's not going to be a pass where there used to be, but we're just now we're on a little bit more even playing field, I would say, going forward. We still need to be just as engaged in prayer and fasting, like we've said. But no administration is going to save us. But things have gotten so upside down. If you'd asked me years ago, I would have been among those, and still would be, to say no other rights matter if you don't have the right to life. But things are upside down now, where we can't, because our speech and our safety with everything that's going on, with the law not being observed and just walking down the street, we don't have the right to talk about the right to life on the public in the public square very often, or people are being arrested for praying in front of a facility. So we can't even defend the right to life now that these other rights are being so infringed upon. So we have to get things back on an even keel. We have to kind of put those fires out before we can turn around and say, yes, we're going to, I mean, obviously life is the prime issue for many of us, and as well it should be, but because it's been so upside down, but it's, I would argue that that's conversely also a good thing, because it's gotten so bad now people are starting to see and starting to wake up. And I think we all have a role in continuing the tide of that, informing others and waking them up and galvanizing them.
One of the things I think is working in our favor right now is over the past 4 or 5 years, the government and the media has so gaslit the people that they're now seeing what the truth is. And as we move forward, and we find out now all these drones that are flying over New Jersey or whatever, nobody believes what the government is saying about it, because nobody believes the government anymore. Nobody is believing what big medicine has to say about things, because they've been gaslit for so long on this. And you go from one area of the country to and the government to another, and you find the same thing over and over again. The censorship was terrible, and people just don't believe that they're getting the truth anymore. This is why I think the alternate media sites are becoming more popular, why Fox News is probably more powerful now than any of the other cable services, and even some of the networks, because people are beginning to see through that, and they're gravitating back to where their heart and soul really is, which is individual liberty and the freedom to practice your religion the way you want, the freedom to debate and to say things and not to be shut down, and the freedom to parent. You know, that's a big thing, because a lot of these things that you two have been talking about for the last couple of minutes are done without parental consent. And so you have children that are literally being turned over to doctors and people without their parents' consent. And in a couple of states, like in California, and we've talked about this, Gene, in the program, California is a sanctuary state for LGBT people that want to transgender. If a kid can get out to California, they will appoint a guardian for him out there that will allow him to go through the gender-affirming medical care.
I think they're also, California, am I wrong, is a sanctuary state for abortion without parental notification.
And in California, interesting thing, we talk about law. In California, it is now against the law to investigate a newborn's death.
Yeah, there's shield laws in a couple of states, too, where if someone goes across state lines or mails the abortion pill, the sanctuary states are trying to protect abortion at all costs. And it's, hands off the kids.
Yeah, hands off the kids. But yet, if you can get a kid to California, you know, if you're an aunt and want your 14-year-old to come out and visit with you for a week, and you get them out, and the kid says, you know, I sometimes feel like a girl, boy, that's it. And you don't know what happens because the state isn't obliged to notify the parents at that point.
Yeah, these are things that we all need to be following in terms of the progress and the wins in these issue matters. This is the one thing that I love about people who are faithful Catholics or Christians or even Jewish, from the Jewish community. The faithful are the ones that understand natural law and truth and will fight for it to the bitter end, you know, and become white martyrs and work to progress in these, to educate the public in these areas. I hope that continues and grows.
Yeah, and that's what we've been sounding the horn on for the last 11, 12 years here. And I don't know if anybody's going to replace us. I don't think so at this point, but maybe we'll come back.
Well, if someone's interested, I think the station would be glad to talk to you.
And I've got an experienced co-host that will be happy to sit in.
Yeah. That would be a roller coaster ride. We'll see. We'll see how.
We'll see how.
We don't know. None of us can predict the future, but we can all talk about what would be nice to see, right?
One of the things I'm going to miss in the next couple of years, being here at this microphone, is some of the things that are going on politically. the people that are trying to Trump-proof their states, how that's going to go. Obviously, I'll be watching it from home, but we won't be able to comment on it because it will have a direct effect on some of the things that we've been talking about here, and how they want to now. All of a sudden, they want to abolish. Well, they've wanted to do this for a while. Abolish the Electoral College. They want to pack the Supreme Court again. Which, what's that going to do to us, Jeff? If they pack the Supreme Court?
Yeah, I mean, that could definitely be a problem. I mean, the Supreme Court, even where it's right now, sometimes the decisions you kind of are head scratchers as well. But yeah, I mean, I think that can be could be further tyranny. But yeah, I mean, I think the one thing I want to kind of mention back to what Gina was saying about hearts and minds. I mean, I think we're hopeful with the new administration. I mean, obviously, we want to try to get President Trump back to his kind of 2016 position on life. One, I thought very positive thing I heard last night, just listened to the Loopcast driving back home last night, was they interviewed RFK Jr. Now, obviously, President Trump got elected with the help of three kind of former Democrats that are all very pro-choice, RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, and Elon Musk. But RFK Jr. talked about that it wasn't his administration and that President Trump is pro-life, and so he was going to enact those policies like the Mexico Accords and not fund of public finance of abortions, and so he was going to honor that, and so that was very hopeful. And sometimes I think he sounds pretty pro-life, and then sometimes his handlers kind of get him to kind of retrade on that. But I think that is a positive step, and we got to keep working for that. I hope this year at the March for Life in D.C. there's a big turnout, and I think potentially I could see, I don't know, the President Trump would show, but I could see Vice President-elect Vance being there, and I think that would be helpful. But back to Gina's point, we got to change hearts and minds. I had the fortune to campaign for some local candidates, Brad Zahn, Mark Hansen. Unfortunately, they both lost, but I think there is something in our culture that almost 50 years of Roe v. Wade that's changed, and so there is an element where people think we have to have abortion, and we need to change those hearts and minds, as Gina was saying.
Are you going to the March for Life again this year?
Yes.
How many years in a row now have you been doing?
Well, the 1 year was canceled because of COVID, but I think I started in 2010. And I hope we have a good turnout.
Yeah, I hope you do too. You doing anything for the March for Life? You're with Heartbeat International.
Yeah, I will. Typically, we take moms and babies to Congress at that same time to meet with their lawmakers to convey the message that pregnancy centers are good for America. And then we take the moms to the march. We're not doing the Babies Go to Congress initiative at this month. We'll be doing it later in the year, but we will be there on the ground. So I'll be reporting for Heartbeat International on the march and surrounding events.
The pro-life centers, pregnancy centers, are under attack now. Mm-hmm. There are certain senators that want to abolish them. They call them
fake clinics.
Yes.
Say they deceive women. Mm-hmm. Yes, they're. So it's the antidote to abortion. the best answer is against abortion is another person. If you're there for that woman and you can help her understand that she's not alone and that there are people that will help her and resources, then it takes away that awful mystique that she feels like she has to have abortion. Because I would argue that a majority of women that find themselves at a facility or ordering those abortion pills online, they are there because they feel they have no other choice. And if that's the situation, then that's no choice. Yeah. So the pregnancy centers and medical clinics and maternity homes and nonprofit adoption agencies, they are all the antidote to abortion. And so it's standing in the way of the bottom line of the abortion industry. So yes, they're coming after them legislatively and in the court of public opinion and in various ways.
Good. All right, we're kind of running out of time right now, and I want to give my final thank yous a little bit here, but you have something. I want to remember, and while we're talking about you, Gina, you were replaced for about 4 months at one time.
I tried to get out of it.
Yeah, you tried to get out. Pam Burdell sat in for you, did a good job. Yeah. Very nice job.
And then she moved to Colorado.
And so you got drafted back again real quick. But she was from St. Francis Parish, and she used to work at Divine Treasures, and then she worked in the...
And she was a listener.
And she worked down at Mercy Hospital for a while in the pastoral care office. And so we wanted to remember her, that she was part of this program here, and we don't want to forget her.
Nope, thanks to her.
Yeah. We have, Gina, I've got something for you that I wanted to give to you. Do you have it? Oh, here it is. All right.
A gift in the middle of the show?
A small little, well, we're at the end of the show.
Nobody can see what's going on here.
Well,
let me ruffle the paper for you.
Hold it up to the microphone, and people might be able to see it then.
Right. Oh, but look at this.
I wanted to get you something that would remind you a little bit of the show, and I will bless that for you before we leave today.
That's nice. It's a medal with St. Michael, the Archangel. Yes.
St. Michael, defend us, I think it says.
Yep, defend us in the battle.
Defend us in the battle.
Everyone should have one of these.
And that's what we've been doing.
That's right.
That's what we've been
thank
doing.
You, Deacon Mike. Thank you, Luann.
And thank you for all of your years putting up with me. I'm sure I'm not an easy person to deal with all the time.
You are super smart, and that's the part that draws me in.
Well, thank you. Notice she didn't say handsome or, tall and good looking or anything like that. Just super smart. Well, I'll take that. That's good. All right. It's about time we close here, and let's close with our Defender's prayer once again. For the last time, St. Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray, and do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, thrust into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. That's it for this week. We usually say something like, we'll be back again next week, but of course we won't. But we do want to acknowledge a few people that have been part of the program for as many years as we've been on here. First of all, Aidan Pugh, who is behind the screens here, and Deacon Tony Valdez, who've been behind the scenes helping us technologically, I guess, getting the word or getting the sound out of here. We can talk all we want among us, but unless there's somebody pushing the buttons to get it to go out, we can't get it out. And of course, to our station manager, Matt, welcome. We've had a number of station managers that we've worked with. Matt is here now, and he's been very good with us. And of course, we want to remember our sponsor. We've had a number of sponsors over the years, but right now it's Imogene Ingredients, and the two folks that are in charge of that are Paul Martin and Paul Mitchell. And we want to thank them for that. So we certainly appreciate all the efforts, everybody's part, to make this a program I hope worth listening to. And unfortunately, this is it. And as we say at the end of our shows, make sure that you go to church and take your kids. And I'm going to use this gavel now. And Faith on Trial is now adjourned.
Our freedom of conscience and religion is being challenged by laws and regulations imposed by secular society. Faith on Trial, with Defender of the Faith, Deacon Mike Mano. Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio, iowacatholicradio.com, and the Iowa Catholic Radio app.
Support for Faith on Trial and Iowa Catholic Radio provided in part by Imogene Ingredients.